Welcome, folks. My name is Christine Wildman. My pronouns are she, they. Um, and that means that I'm okay with being referred to as she or they. And I work at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children as a research and knowledge mobilization specialist with the Neighbours, Friends, and Families campaign, which is a provincial campaign aimed at helping everyday people see the warning signs of intimate partner violence and how to support those who may be experiencing it. I am here today on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Adirondack peoples, next to the Six Nations of the Grand River, also known as Brantford, which is subject to the Haldeman Treaty of 1784. And I was thinking today about something that I wanted to share about that's sort of unique to Brantford, and that is having an unfortunate history of housing a residential school called the Mohawk Institute, which operated from 1828 to 1970. The Mohawk Institute is also known as the Mush Hole and is still standing today. It's currently being operated by Woodland Cultural Center and provides tours, including virtual tours of the school. And I've done the tour at the school several times. And every time I go, I learn something new. So I highly recommend it. So if you're ever in Brantford or are interested in the topic, I encourage you to check out uh, the information about the tours. And learn more about the history of colonization in the residential school system. And so their website is woodlandculturalcenter.ca. And the tours are really, really reasonably priced and include survivor stories. So please do check that out. There's lots of events that happen at the Woodland Cultural Center as well that throughout the year. So today, our event today is in webinar format. So that means that if you have questions, can you please put them in the Q&A and we will do our best to get to them. And so I want to welcome Nikita. Nikita's pronouns are she, her, and Nikita is a graduate student in the School and of Applied Child Psychology program at Western University and a gender-based violence training facilitator within our center, CREVAC. She's currently a research assistant on digitally informed youth, which is a digital safety project where she investigates young people's experiences with technology-facilitated sexual violence. Nikita has an interest in research that informs trauma and violence-informed programming that supports the mental health of youth from historically marginalized communities who may experience systematic barriers to accessing care. Today, Nikita is with us to talk about youth rights and responsibilities in online spaces, and she will provide online safety tips and support resources. So take it away, Nikita.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today, and I'm really excited to talk to you a bit more about your rights in online spaces, some tips about staying safe online, and some responsibilities we have as online citizens. Like Christine said, I am a research assistant on the DIY Digital Safety Research Project. So I'd like to start off by talking a bit more, just kind of briefly about what that project is and what we're trying to do with it. So like Christine said, with the DIY Digitally Informed Project, we investigate young people's experiences with technology facilitated sexual violence. And that might be a term that, is new to some people, and that's totally okay. We'll go over it a little later on in the webinar. But essentially what we do at DIY Digital Safety is we kind of work with young people and we talk to young people to learn more about the kinds of harms that they've experienced online. And with that information that we learn from young people, we want to create resources for them and for the adults that play really important roles in their lives to kind of better support them when they experience things like online harms. And adults that play important roles in their lives can be like teachers, like educators, people who like make policies, or people who work with youth in the community. And all of this is with the main goal of empowering young people like you to um, navigate digital spaces safely and understand your rights. One of the most important of which being that you have the right to feel safe online. Just like we have a right to feel safe physically in our physical spaces, we have a right to feel safe in online spaces as well. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk a bit more about that. When we talk about online safety and privacy, I want to start off by talking about just a bit about the difference between personal and private information. So, personal information is information that's descriptive, that wouldn't personally identify you. So, for example, it could be things like your hair color or your gender identity or your personal interests. So, for example, if I'm posting somewhere on an account that's like maybe anonymous and I'm like, my hair is brown and I really love like the Fast and the Furious franchise. That's just an example. I don't know if that's personally true to me, but if I'm posting that, that's not enough information for somebody to read that and be like, Nikita's the one that posted that, right? It's descriptive information, but it wouldn't personally identify who you are. And that's different from private information, which is information that should be kept confidential to protect your safety and your security. So examples of this could be your address, because posting your address allows people to know like where you live and who you are. Passwords, because passwords can be used to access accounts that indicate who you are, and your social insurance number. So those are just some examples, and I kind of just wanted to distinguish between those two because that's not something that we talk about a lot. There can also be some kind of information that on its own isn't enough to like directly identify you, but it can help people get that information. So, for example, things like the name of your school or like the gym that you go to. So, when we think about things like this and wanting to kind of protect our private information, there are some things that we can do to protect our privacy and our safety online, one of which being using strong passwords. And I know a lot of you have probably heard this before, right? Like trying to make our passwords strong so people can easily guess them. So instead of like kind of short descript or like names or names of things or things that might be easier to remember, those things might also be easier for people to guess, right? So for passwords, we would recommend kind of using different characters. So like capital and lowercase letters in as well as numbers and special characters like at symbols or like exclamation points or like hashtags. And I also recognize that we have lots of passwords for lots of different things. So it can be hard to kind of remember all of them, and you might want to kind of come up with a password that's easy to remember and use it for everything, but that's not necessarily the best way to keep our private information safe, because if somebody can guess that password, then they have access to everything. So there are things that exist called password managers, and those are software. It's like software that kind of keeps track of all of the different passwords that we have, and they help make sure that our passwords are strong. Another thing that we can do is something called two-factor authentication. And essentially what that is if you think of like a password as a key to like opening a gate to access your accounts, two-factor authentication kind of creates another gate. So it creates another layer of security. So for example, if I'm trying to access my Instagram account, I use my password to kind of unlock that gate, but then I get in there and there's a second gate there and it's wanting to verify that it's actually me that holds that key. So using things like two-factor authentication, which is like, it could be like sending a code to your email that you have to input, or sending an email or sending a code to your like phone, like through text, or like if you have an app, two of which are common or include Microsoft Authenticator and Duo Mobile. Those are two-factor authentication apps. That's just like adding another layer of security to make sure that the person who's using your password or using that key is actually you. And we can also do things like manage our privacy settings on social media. So like setting our profiles to private, blocking and restricting people that we don't want to be able to access our things, or using close friends list when that's an option on like the platform that you're using. So with all of this being said, the one thing that I really want to highlight here is that privacy doesn't just apply to our own digital activity. And it's really important to respect the digital privacy and safety of others, including our friends and our peers. So you should 100% have a say in what is posted and shared about you, and so should other people. And like I said earlier, we all have the right to feel safe in online spaces, and we all have the right to engage in online spaces in safe and enjoyable ways. So it's really important, and that's kind of part of what we're doing with DIY digital safety, that you understand your rights and feel comfortable exercising these rights in online spaces. We know from research that Canadian youth believe that online spaces should be free of racism, sexism, and harassment. And that's really important. But unfortunately, we also know that this isn't always true for online spaces. So we want to do our best to kind of make sure that we understand that we have the right to feel safe and understand some of the supports that we can go to if we've experienced harms online, which I'll be talking a bit more about today. So we know that there are different types of harms that young people can experience, or that people in general, but also young people can experience online. And we encourage people to use the term technology facilitated violence because from our perspective, it more accurately reflects like the range or the spectrum of harms that people can experience through digital technologies, platforms, and devices. So this can include, or examples of this can include being harassed online, or like somebody threatening somebody else online, or posting insults on someone's social media pages, trolling, doxing, which is if somebody kind of shares somebody else's like private information. So for example, if somebody's sharing another person's address online, creating fake accounts, spreading lies, rumors, or secrets, sharing private, embarrassing, or intimate pictures without somebody's consent. And there's also, unconsensually receiving intimate pictures from somebody else without like consenting to it. That's a form of tech facilitated violence. We also have things like recording somebody secretly and sharing it on social media, cyberbullying, sextortion, which is, we'll talk about this a bit more, but kind of briefly, this is if somebody threatens to share a nude or intimate image of another person in exchange for favors like money or more images or other like other sexual activity. We also have deep fakes, which are an example of tech facilitated violence, and this is when people use artificial intelligence to create like nude or sexual images or videos of another person. And we have things like luring and grooming that can happen online as well. So lots of different examples here. I think the main point that I want you to take away from this is there are lots of things that fall under the kind of category of tech facilitated violence. And the language that we use is really, really important. Because we want to recognize that, what people are experiencing online and the harms that they're experiencing have, impacts on their health and their mental health and their well-being. On the DIY digital safety website, we have some resources, and you can use the QR code on the screen. If you haven't used a QR code before, you can you just hold your phone up and then have your camera open. You can tap it and you'll be able to access the resource that I'm sharing here, or you can go to the DIYdigitalsafety.ca website. And we have, for example, a resource on kind of situating terms like cyberbullying within the context of tech facilitated violence, because we know this is a new term for some people. So you can access this resource, and I would encourage you to, if you feel like it's something you might be interested or if it's something that may be helpful to you. One thing that I really, really want us to kind of, that I really want to make clear is that not everybody faces the same risks when it comes to online harms. So based on kind of research that's been conducted, we know that people from historically marginalized and minoritized races, ethnicities, genders, and sexual orientations, so that includes people who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, people who are part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, people who are disabled, and like many people with many more identities, we know that they're disproportionately impacted by things like tech facilitated violence. And what this means is not everyone faces the same kind of risk. Sometimes people face compounding risks. And it's really important to recognize that. And we know from research that's been conducted with young people that online harms like tech facilitated violence can have really, really serious impacts when it comes to your health, mental health, and well-being. So knowing your rights online is really important when dealing with things like tech facilitated violence, especially when it comes to knowing where you can go to for support and knowing how to report or even just talk about what you've experienced. So I'm just going to take a second to look at the Q&A. Oh, or I might take a look at the Q&A after. We'll have some time for questions if that works. Okay, cool. So when it comes to knowing your rights online, one thing I want to make clear is that Canadian youth, which includes children, adolescents, and teens, are entitled to be protected by the law without discrimination. And what that means is if you're a person that's under 18 years old, you have like equal rights to be protected by the law as any adult. And some acts of tech facilitated violence can be against the law and they can violate your rights. So when you're dealing with things like tech facilitated violence, depending on what you're experiencing, there may be offenses under the Canadian Criminal Code that relate. And I want to make the disclaimer that I'm not, intending necessarily to provide legal advice, but what I'm really intending to do is to provide you with some information about your rights as they relate to your online experiences and the law. And this also isn't an exhaustive list. It's just some examples of things that are illegal under Canadian law that we know young people unfortunately commonly experience. So what I'll be talking about today is non-consensual intimate image distribution, or if somebody is threatening to share your nudes without your consent, voyeurism, sextortion, and luring. So one thing that I want to make really, really clear is that sexual interactions are common online, and things like sending and receiving nudes with somebody that you trust are a normal part of exploring your sexuality and your bodily autonomy, which is your right to make choices about your body. And you might have been told in the past that it's illegal for you to share or take nudes if you're under 18, but this is not true. I really want you to know that this is not true. You can share nudes with another close in age peer as long as it's done privately and consensually, meaning you both of you, or like the people who are engaging in this, are both consenting to do so, and it's just between you. What is illegal is if somebody is sharing another person's nudes without their consent. So if somebody has a sexual or intimate picture or video of you that was created in private circumstances and they knowingly post it online and share it with other people, they can be charged. And this is because this is listed under the Canadian Criminal Code. So I want to make it really clear, because I know like this was part of the education that I had growing up, right? Like very fear-based, like, oh, you shouldn't send nudes because that's illegal. So I want to make it very, very clear what is illegal is if somebody shares your nudes without your consent. It's also illegal for adults to exploit or like ask teens or people who are under 18 for nudes. And it's also illegal to pressure people to share nudes in a harassing way. So I really want to make that clear. When we let sending and receiving nudes when you're young is a part of exploring your bodily autonomy and your sexuality. And if somebody threatens to or shares your nudes without your consent, you did nothing wrong. I want to make that really clear. When we send nudes, we can kind of think about some things to maybe kind of assess the situation. So we can think about like, do you trust the person? Are you feeling pressured in any way to send nudes? Have you talked to the other person about if they're deleting it right away, or if they're saving it, how they're going to privately and securely save them? Or have you thought about things like, blurring your face or identifying features in the background, or like if you have a tattoo that people can recognize? So these are some things that we can think about. But again, I want to really reiterate, if somebody is threatening to share your nudes without your consent, that is not your fault. And we have a resource on the DIY digital safety website, which is kind of what to do if somebody is threatening to share your intimate images. So if you've unfortunately been in this situation, or if you're currently in this situation, or if you know somebody who might have been in this situation, this may be helpful for you to access. So this is on the digital safety website. You can access it through the QR code on the screen, or even if like it's like months from now and you feel like this would be helpful to you and you don't remember the URL, if you Google DIY digital safety, it will come up our website, and it's under the resources tab. So this just gives us more information about, things that we can do if you're experiencing something like this, supports you can reach out to, and some steps that you might want to take. Some other things that I want to talk about as well are one of them being voyeurism. So this is if somebody secretly takes like a sexual or nude or partially nude picture or video of you without you knowing. So examples of this can include taking pictures of somebody where it's common or expected to be like naked. So like a changing room or a bedroom or a bathroom. And you don't have to be fully naked for it to be considered voyeurism. And sometimes what will happen is people take these pictures or videos or images and they can post them online. And I want to make it really clear that voyeurism is a crime listed under the Canadian Criminal Code. So whenever I'm talking about stuff like this, like what I just talked about and voyeurism, and when I talk about sextortion and luring, I want you to know, like, if you have experienced something like this, there are things in place to protect you or to support you. Okay. So when we talk about sextortion, that is when a person threatens to share a sexual or intimate image or video of you for you to do something for them. So, for example, it could include somebody telling you that you have to send more images to them, or send them money, or do something sexual with them, or else they'll share your nudes. And as the name suggests, this is a form of extortion, which again is illegal under Canadian criminal law. The reason I'm kind of like sitting here and telling you this is I feel like we maybe don't get enough information about what's out there to kind of protect us in situations when we're experiencing online harm. So I just really, really want you to be aware of the rights that you have when you're in online spaces and if you've experienced some form of harm. Luring is when someone uses tech to communicate with a young person in order to commit a sexual offense against them. So, for example, this could be like a much older person messaging you on social media to meet up with you for sex or to get you to send nudes to them. And again, internet luring is a crime, and this is listed under the Canadian Criminal Code. Um, so if you've experienced something, for example, like sextortion, we also have a resource available for you through the DIYdigitalsafety.ca website. This is just an infographic that kind of lays out, like what is sextortion, what are the impacts of it, and what should you do or what can you do if you're being sextorted. And it includes some resources on places that you can go to for support. So you can access it through the QR code or through our website as well. I know sometimes if you're experiencing harms like this, it can seem like there's nothing that you can do. And it's part of it is because we don't talk about things like this, right? Which is why I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all about this. And I really want you to know that there are options for things like reporting and support. So, one of the things that we can do is report to social media platforms because it's often against the rule to, for example, share nude images without consent on social media. So if you feel comfortable doing so, and if you're experiencing something like somebody's consensually sharing your nudes online or sharing something that you're not comfortable with, you can make a complaint to the social media company or website or the search engines where the images are posted and request that they remove the image. And on some platforms, there are also options available that can stop images from being posted in the first place. So this on the screen right now is a resource that I want to share that I think is really helpful because there's so many different social media websites and we don't know how to report things on all of them. So if you use the QR code on the screen, this is a resource from the Revenge Porn Helpline. And essentially what this is, it's a web page. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see icons for different social media websites. There's more than just this. This is all I could fit on the screen. But this will kind of give you a guide on how to report things on different platforms. So you'll click the icon and it can show you, it can direct you. You can choose to either read more about their policies or to a guide on how to report things. So if you ever feel like you're in a situation where you'd want to report things, this may be a helpful resource. And this is from the Revenge Porn Hotline or Helpline, sorry. We can also report to police or legal authorities, but I say this and I want to make it very clear that not everybody feels comfortable going to the police, and that is totally okay if you do not want to report to the police. There's no obligation for you to do so, and we recognize that it's not comfortable for everyone to be doing this. If you're interested, if you've experienced a form of online harm and you would like to report to the police, like I shared earlier, we have some resources on our DIYdigitalsafety.ca website, like that fact sheet about non-consensual distribution of intimate images and the relevant laws associated with that. So if you do want to report to the police, you might want to come prepared with some of that information regarding your rights and the laws that relate, or bring a support person because this can be a challenging experience for many people, and not all criminal justice staff or people who are within that space may be well informed about the law in this area. And this also goes for, wanting to reach out to an adult that you trust about things, right? Not all adults kind of know about the laws that exist in this area or the rights that you have in online spaces. So it might be helpful to kind of come prepared with some of that information if you choose to do so. And then we can also access community organizations and resources, which I will share in the next few slides. So firstly, we have needhelpnow.ca. And this is a website that can help if your nudes have been shared online or if you've experienced things like luring, sextortion, or other forms of tech facilitated sexual violence. And they provide information on things like emotional support, reporting things you've experienced, and they can help connect you with support services in your area. And the people who run needhelpnow.ca also operate a tool called projectarachnid.ca, and this can help get images of people who are getting nude images of people under 18 automatically taken down from online websites. So this may be helpful if you're experiencing the non-consensual distribution of your nudes. We also have techsafety.ca. So techsafety.ca has information on things like tech facilitated and gender-based violence, tech safety and privacy. So kind of a little bit like what we talked about today, but in much more detail, with a much more like kind of options on kind of things that you can like look into when it comes to like tech safety and privacy. And they also have a really interesting toolkit that may be helpful if you've experienced forms of online harm, which is focused on preserving digital evidence. So this can help you keep a record of what happened in case you need proof, whether you would like to report this or reach out to an adult you trust, or whether you would just kind of want to keep a record of what happened until you feel comfortable talking to somebody about it. And then, of course, we have Kids Help Phone, which is an organization that provides emotional support to Canadian youth, and this can be accessed through their website, which is kidshelpphone.ca, and their phone number that's on the screen, which is 1-800-668-6868. I've been talking about the DIY digital safety website a lot, and we have a lot of resources there that may be helpful. And I really encourage you to, if you're interested in looking, or if you feel like any of these resources that I've talked about might be helpful for you, I encourage you to just go take a look. We've created resources about things like nudes in the law, what to do if you're experiencing sextortion, how tech facilitated violence is addressed in school, and information about tech facilitated gender-based violence. And one thing that's also really cool is that we have lists of resources for young people that are specific to each province, and for youth with diverse identities under the support services tab. Okay, so I kind of just want to end off on, overall, if there's anything I want you to take away from this, it's that you have the right to feel safe online, and you deserve tools and information to help you connect in safe, enjoyable, and empowering ways, because messaging around this historically has been really fear-based. So our team at DIY Digital Safety really looks forward to collaborating with young people like you and community partners and organizations to help make this a reality. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Oops. And I'm going to take a look at the Q&A. Okay, does Project Arachnid also help AI versions of leaked nudes of people under the age of 18 off the internet? That's actually a really interesting question. I can look into that. I would say that it wouldn't hurt to reach out in case if you're experiencing this, because they would be best able to kind of help in that situation, because they have experience. What they can do is they can kind of detect nude images of people who are under 18 and get them taken off the internet. So even if it's an AI image of you, that's still a nude image of somebody who's under the age of 18. So I don't have a definitive answer, but I would say that it's worth reaching out to them if that's something that you think would be helpful for you. We had this happen in a school in our area. 7 to 13-year-old were targeted. I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to hear that. Unfortunately, we've been hearing a lot about kind of AI deepfakes. So I'm really sorry to hear that. I would say Project Arachnid and like needhelpnow.ca would be really helpful resources to reach out to see if that's something that they can help you with. Oh, yes, Project Arachnid can help specific to AI generated nudes. Thank you for providing that context. So yeah, if that's something that would be helpful to you or anybody who's experienced, I would really recommend that you reach out if that's something you feel comfortable doing. I'll share that information. Okay, cool.
I also just wanted to reiterate a little bit of what Nikita said around like the resources available on the DIY website, because we get contacted from teachers quite often about not having the lingo or not knowing how to support students. And there's so much information on the website and downloadable posters that can be put up in schools. So please do check it out. And I also wanted to say that, I have a 22-year-old daughter, and many of my daughter's friends had difficulty with their nudes being shared without their consent. And the messaging that they got from their parents, from teachers, from counselors, was always, why did you do this? Why did you allow this to happen? And now it's out there forever and your life is going to be ruined. And that kind of messaging is so harmful because it's creating a situation where youth are not reaching out for help when they need it, because they're afraid that they're going to be blamed and told that their lives are going to be ruined. So we really do need to get away from that kind of messaging. So I appreciate all of the work that you and everyone else at the DIY team is doing.
Yeah, and also I appreciate everyone who's like attended the webinar today, right? Like this is a really important step in helping kind of reduce the shame and stigma that's been perpetuated against things like that, which like you said can increase barriers to accessing support that's really sorely needed. So yeah, no, that's I'm really excited to have been here today to kind of share more about what we're doing. I love what DIY is doing. I've used your resources often, so keep in mind versus victim blaming. Thank you. That's really great to hear, Sabina. Like, I will pass that on to the rest of the team. I'm really glad to know that the resources have been helpful.
Does anyone else have any final questions before we go? I'm just going to give folks a few seconds. Nikita, if there's anything you want to say before we um,
Um, no, if you have any questions, we have contact information on the DIYdigitalsafety.ca website, for, multiple people who are on the team, including myself. So if any questions come up afterwards, definitely feel free to like contact us through there if anything kind of pressing comes up.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Nikita, for sharing your expertise with us today. And I look forward to promoting all of this information that was shared today more widely on our youth pages, to get the correct information out to youth about the fact that there is something that they can do about these situations. So thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who joined today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining.